Good evening. Welcome to SAU 88's Superintendents Chat. I'm Dr. Gail Paluti, Superintendent of Schools for the Lebanon School District. I'd like to welcome my guests this evening. I have today with us Ms. Christine Downing, who is our District Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and Matt Burge, who is the Director of the Technical Institute for Hypertherm. Thank you both for joining me this evening. Our topic today is college and career-ready standards, and we're actually going to be talking a little bit about college and career-ready standards from an educational point of view, as far as the school district is concerned, but also from the point of view of business and industry, and how the college and career-ready standards are supporting the work that's being done specifically at Hypertherm. So my first question is for Ms. Downing. What are the standards and why do we need them and why are they new?
Sure. The New Hampshire College and Career Standards are really learning targets that we can measure student achievement against. They're important because they provide us a consistent foundation of what it is we want students to know and be able to do.
Great. And could you talk specifically about the New Hampshire College and Career Ready Standards?
Sure, would love to. The New Hampshire College and Career Readiness Standards encompass our traditional standards for our content areas. Those would be standards for mathematics, science, English, social studies, the arts, etc. They also encompass what we like to call these 21st century learning skills. Those are the soft skills that we often hear in the business industry of perseverance, creative thinking, problem solving, communication. And so they really encompass all our set of standards, the content as well as the processes that students need to have in order to be college and career ready.
And we talk a lot about assessment. How will we be assessing the college and career standards?
It's important to know regarding the assessment. The assessment isn't necessarily driven by our college and career standards. The assessment is really driven by federal legislation that requires us to test in certain grade levels. And if we're going to have these standards and we want to measure student achievement on it, it's important that we have an assessment that does that, not only at a local level, at a district level, at a regional level, state level, and national level. We will have an assessment. New Hampshire has joined what's called the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, and that assessment is being aligned to the college and career ready standards. So that will occur for us in the spring of 2015.
And a lot of our students and our parents in our community are aware of Kneecap Assessment. Can you talk a little bit about how you see the differences between the Kneecap Assessment that we've been familiar with over the last few years and the Smarter Balanced Assessment?
Sure. There's actually some similarities for New Hampshire. As you said, New Hampshire was a Kneecap assessment state. Kneecap, we love acronyms in education, stands for New England Common Assessment Program. It's important to point that out because it was a collaboration between 4 New England states. Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island collaborated to build this assessment. Interesting enough, we were the only collaboration in the nation that actually built an assessment that crossed state boundaries. So we're kind of at an advantage going into Smarter Balanced because Smarter Balanced Assessment right now is being developed for 26 states across the nation. So there's some similarity there in that we've already experienced what that looks like from a collaboration. Some of the differences, though, is in the item types that are going to happen. In Kneecap, we traditionally had open response questions which required students to think, problem solve, and then justify their answers. We also had the typical multiple choice questions. Smarter Balance is also adding those to their testing, but as well they have an element called a performance task. And this is actually where teachers do some pre-teaching around concepts, and then kids will engage in real life applications and have to apply the knowledge that they know and some of these soft skills that I mentioned earlier to demonstrate how they can blend content knowledge with application.
And Kneecap traditionally was done paper and pencil.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference with SBAC?
Sure. Kneecap was traditional paper and pencil. SBAC is going to be all online, so it's all digital. And students will be interfacing and using digital tools to complete the test. in so much as during the testing cycle, they'll also be exploring websites, they'll be doing online readings, and they'll just use a variety of interactive and digital tools to complete the test. So that's a big shift from Smarter Balance to the Kneecap assessment.
And we've talked a lot about strategies and how teaching might change as a result of the Common Core and college and career ready standards. How do you see this impacting what actually happens day to day in our classrooms?
The emphasis on the New Hampshire College and Career Readiness Standards is really putting a focus on how we teach. The standards themselves aren't, from a content perspective, aren't very much different than what we've done all along. You know, the example I like to give is we continue to teach the same mathematical concepts we've taught. It's really now putting a focus on how do we teach those concepts, and it's also putting a focus on we need to take the understanding to a deeper level. We talk about things called depth of knowledge and asking kids more probing questions that require more critical thinking, more problem solving, more of those higher order thinking skills. So the standards really shift away from what it is we have to teach, because the articulated standards do that for us. These are the learning targets. These are the items that we want students to know and be able to do, and they really force us to look at how are we instructing and also assessing students on a regular basis. We don't want to wait for that one-time assessment. We want assessment to become part of the instructional cycle, so it's ongoing for students, so we can give them feedback about their growth and their achievement.
Great. Matt, can you tell us a little bit about how Hypertherm got involved in the conversation around college and career ready standards, and how, as the director of the facility in terms of the educational piece, how does that impact Hypertherm?
Sure. I think we probably got involved in the conversation primarily because of the function that we provide at the Hypertherm Technical Training Institute. We train new CNC machine operators. CNC stands for Computer Numeric Control. It's basically lathes and mills that are run via computer. And Hypertherm started the Technical Training Institute out of a need to find and train new machine operators. We're really struggling to find them. And so we started developing a fairly lengthy hiring process to select folks to come into our education program. And quite frankly, what we discovered as we were going through this process, that we were implementing some aptitude assessments. We provide all the education at the Hypertherm Technical Training Institute to allow somebody to be successful. We actually train people who have no prior understanding, but we need people to have a certain foundation. And what we were discovering was that a little more than 50% of the individuals who were coming through these assessments were failing in the math area. And specifically in the math area, and what I'm referring to is basically the ability to add and subtract would be counting change. And so that was quite alarming to us, and so we have that's probably the chief reason why we've gotten involved in the conversation. That, and ultimately a business need to staff our workforce. And you know, that comes from our community and our schools, and so being a part of that discussion is a healthy place to be.
And Christine's major area of training is in the area of mathematics. So Christine, can you talk a little bit about how you see Smarter Balanced and college and career ready standards helping to support the deficiencies that Matt's talking about?
Sure. The deficiency in mathematics, it's something that we've dealt with quite a while, and industry is definitely seeing that effect. And I think what the college and career readiness standards are going to do for us, especially from a mathematics education point of view, is we've lived in a country where we've tried to do mathematics that is basically a mile wide and an inch deep. You know, it's those topics that keep coming over and over and over again, to now we've got a set of standards where, again, we're still delivering by the end of 12th grade the same mathematical concepts we've been doing all along, but we've really pared it down. You know, there's 3 things in the standards that we talk about for mathematics education. It's called focus, coherence, and rigor. And the focus does that. It drills down at each grade level. What are those key foundational skills, like you said, adding, subtracting, fraction work, decimals, percents, ratios, really isolating that to grade levels so we can go much deeper with that understanding. The coherence is paying attention to that progression, knowing that it's almost like a staircase model. Each step of that staircase is vital to keeping it intact. And to build from one year to the next. And then the rigor. The rigor is just that, is in mathematics education, we've learned through the years that we tend to do a really good job at asking those low-level type of math questions, those computational, procedural type questions. We need to take it to the next level to support your industry, to say, now that I understand the basics of the mathematics, now how do I apply it in situations that are going to come at me that aren't textbook type situations, that aren't those routine. You know, that you face, I'm sure, every day in your industry. Yeah.
And Matt, hearing Christine's discussion regarding that area of her expertise, how do you think that we as a school district, and myself as superintendent and Christine as our director of curriculum and instruction and assessment, how can we work together and help support the work that Hypertherm is doing to provide job opportunities for our students?
So, you know, I've done quite a bit of reading, and particularly in the Common Core, and particularly around the math standards. And I think what I'm most encouraged about is what you were discussing around problem solving and critical thinking, because the tasks that are being completed by our workforce and in our machine shop today are not what they're going to be a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. And so critical thinking and problem solving is very important. And, you know, a very specific example I could give would probably be around what I'm aware of as a 5th grade standard, where a specific topic, the Cartesian coordinate system, is introduced. Now, this is something that when I had gone through school, probably was saved until probably the 7th or 8th, maybe even the 9th grade. And being introduced at an early age and having the opportunity to take it into some depth to understand it, and then to be able to see that in application. What I'm suggesting is, you know, partnerships between industry and the workforce and the school systems to allow students to see that the conceptual things that they're learning actually have a real viable use and purpose in the workforce. The Cartesian coordinate system is something that's expressly used every day in CNC machining. And you know, whether, you know, our experience is that probably 80% of the individuals who come through our programs aren't familiar with it. And is that because they were exposed and have forgotten, or never were to be in the first place? I'm not sure, but I'm excited to see some of the changes that are being instituted.
We are too, and I think from a practical standpoint, you know, in a teacher having to manage all that they need to do in the course of a year and a day, it's nice to know that I can spend some quality time on these topics and go deeper and make those connections and involve industry in showing and engaging and motivating kids to want to learn the mathematics. You know, that's another great component of the standards, is to really, as you probably know, you and I both come from a math background, so we probably enjoyed mathematics, but that's not always the case. And so the standards they really promote those habits of mind, and allows children to engage in mathematics in a way that becomes alive for them, and it's not some of that traditional routine approach that we've seen, and so we're excited too.
And I think just to have, as you said, the partnership, so many times when you're teaching, we hear students say, why do I have to learn this? Like, it has no value to me. Why are you making me learn this? And just to hear that one example, I think would make a lot of students, I'm sure, but I think that would have a lot of students saying, oh, okay, maybe it is important for me to learn this, because this Hypertherm's a huge employer in this area, and for students to know that they need to know some of these things to actually become employed is a great way for us to try to partner up. I think that's a great opportunity. So.
Right. I always like to mirror the mathematician with the math educator, because it's that nice blending of, you know, the math educator has the philosophy and the background about, okay, how do I teach somebody this skill? The mathematician really comes in live, making it come alive, the context, the application, and that's what I'm hoping Lebanon School District can do with Hypertherm, is to really explore those options where we can, you know, start to give kids and students that real life scenario and context.
I'm always surprised when we start a new class at the Technical Training Institute how many of our students have a real fear of math. And I think some of what you've alluded to, what alleviates that is seeing its purposefulness and its usefulness in their everyday job and in their life that exists. And you know, some of the, even to talking about problem solving, some of those things that are you know, scientific methods in terms of solving problems that play themselves out very exactly and perfectly in a math world. Those same techniques to solve math problems play themselves out very usefully in many other areas of somebody's job at Hypertherm beyond just solving the practical math itself.
Right, great, yeah.
That's great. And we've talked a lot about how we see the college and career ready standards really helping support our students and supporting business and industry. Can you talk a little bit about what you really feel are, you know, maybe the top 2 or 3 strengths, and from your point of view, and then from your point of view, Matt, and then, you know, what areas do we feel, Christine, need to be strengthened in terms of college and career ready standards or Common Core from an educational point of view?
Sure. One of the strengths I would point to early on for the college and career readiness standards is the fact that it kind of, I always like to use this analogy, it sets the minimum floor. You know, it's what we want all students to know and be able to do and engage them so that it provides them the foundational skills to explore a variety of opportunities after school. Whether it is going into an internship with Hypertherm, or it's going to a technical school, or a, you know, a 4-year college, whatever that choice, but to really level the playing field, so to speak. The college and career readiness standards also allow us, from an educational standpoint, to focus more on what I like to say the instructional practices, bringing the content alive, exploring those partnerships with communities. Those are a couple of strengths that I see. As far as growth areas that we might need in terms of the college and career readiness standards, it is, and it's kind of a growth and a strength that I've already said, but it's shifting to the instructional practices that support really bringing the depth that's needed to the content standards. We, especially from a math perspective, tend to have a traditional instructional model of, you know, teacher models, demonstrates the content knowledge, students practice it, then there might be some independent practice on their own. Well, one of the things we have to think about, at least from a mathematics standpoint and the other content areas, is reverse the instructional model. Let's give the students a real life problem, and when they bump up to those certain content area or skills that we need to teach, that's the time to scaffold it, and that's when they see the purposefulness of what they're learning. So it's almost kind of gearing back to a reversal of, you've got to let some of the students have that freedom to explore. And it is really switching from that lead teacher role to that coaching, that facilitator role, and knowing when to balance in with what the student needs in order to make it purposeful for them. So we've got to pay attention to instruction, and not for anything, that's what the college and career readiness standards is really helping us to focus in on instruction. For years we've focused on curriculum, what it is we want to teach. Now it's how do we do that and do it well to get the achievement results we want.
And Matt, from business and industry's point of view?
We talked about a couple of them already. I'll just reiterate them.
Sure.
The first is probably the depth into mathematics. I think that would be a great help to specifically an employer like Hypertherm. We've also talked about the problem-solving method and a very scientific approach to what do we know, what do we not know, and being able to structure problems in a very purposeful way. That helps with math and a variety of other areas. Sure. And I think probably one we haven't discussed yet is collaborative effort. Yeah. And from a lot of reading I've done and the introduction I've had into these standards, is that collaboration being a large part of solving problems. Interestingly enough, in the workplace, we commonly don't get assigned individual problems and are told to go sit at your desk and to find solutions by yourself, but solving problems in the workplace is a very collaborative effort. And students learning those, even in the primary level school, being able to utilize those skills in through their high school years and through perhaps college or perhaps straight into the workforce will serve everyone.
Yeah.
Great. So any final comments from you, Christine?
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. Matt, any final
No, I
comments?
appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with
And
you.
I appreciate Barbara Couch having you come today. It was nice to be able to have the perspective from business and industry. I know she's very passionate about this. She came and spoke to one of our superintendents' meetings, and it was very passionate. And it's such a wonderful employer in our Upper Valley that whatever we can do to partner, I think will be great from this point forward.
That's great. Thanks for having me.
So thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.